Hey guys, V. Rigoni, Max, high performance real estate entrepreneur. So today we're going to be talking about small business. That's what Codie Sanchez always talks about. And a lot of respect, but sometimes I got to wonder. Now, let's hit the like button, let's subscribe, and let's leave some comments. Now, just to get this going, what she basically was talking about I think it was in a short actually. She was talking about, businesses that you don't want to own, because she's all about small business. She started up in the mergers and acquisitions business. She used to do big deals. She worked for Goldman Sachs, all these kind of names. Great. She understands her stuff. But what the hell is this talking about? The fact that restaurants are a bad business. She also throws in hotels, and she throws in, retail. Now, don't know too much about retail. I know it's got its challenges with, Amazon and all that's going on. I get it. So there is a lot of concern around that retail. Now, you see it in the malls, right? They're closing the stores. They're shutting everything down. In fact, a lot of these interior malls, they're actually ripping half of them down and sticking apartment buildings. They're creating a new model. It's kind of this model based upon the lifestyle model that was designed back somewhere around 2005, 2006. They started putting these lifestyle centers up. Well, what they're doing now is they're ripping down half these malls, and they're creating kind of an outdoor experience, restaurants, shopping, and then lots of apartments. So they're dealing with the retail. Now, I don't know, on an individual basis, it seems like it could be problematic, but I'm sure that there's some very, very high-end and even, mid-sized retailers that are still doing well. The challenged, I get it, all right? Hotels, don't know too much about hotels at this point. We own apartment buildings, but there is a lot of opportunity in any space. The question is, do you know how to buy it right? Do you know how to finance it right? And then do you know how to operate it properly, right? That's really what it comes down to. So to flip over into that which seems to be giving her a lot of negative comments, and that's when she came out and said about the restaurant business, and she's sitting there saying that the average restaurant sells for she said it sells for $188,000, but then they fail within a year. Some of her comments seemed a little conflicting between whether or not we were actually talking about buying the restaurant or starting the restaurant, because I don't know any restaurants that you're going to buy, especially under the model under which we buy restaurants, right, that are going to fail in a year. Sounds absolutely ridiculous. Now, her model and how she models the purchasing and the acquisition of restaurants may be totally different than the way we have done it. But we think we have really kind of came to that success level, created that formula in order to maximize what a restaurant opportunity looks like. How do you make money in it? And that's really the bottom line, right? I don't give a shit what your business is, as long as it's legal and ethical, right? You should be able to apply your basic business understanding, your skill set, and you ought to be able to make anything work in most cases. Is there always an exception? Are you selling ice cubes to an Eskimo? Maybe a problem. But except for that, you ought to be able to apply business principles to any business, and you ought to be able to improve them. Now, am I talking about, you got to go hire an MBA and do all that bullshit? No, I'm talking about practical, on-the-spot applications. Okay, so applying proper business principles, skill sets to any business will cause that business to succeed in most cases. There's always situations that can come up where they're not under your control. Governmental authority changes, zoning changes, traffic pattern changes. Things happen that you cannot control. That's really the bottom line. All right? And we'll talk about some of those things you can't control in a little bit, but basically, any business that is legal and that is ethical, that will produce cash flow, that will produce profit, then apply the metrics to that business, that industry that are out there, and then push hard. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'll give you just an example. We bought this little cafe, little breakfast cafe in Bristol, Wisconsin. just over the border from Illinois. It's kind of like closer to Lake Michigan, within about a 25-minute drive to Lake Michigan. So for those people that are familiar with the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, just over the border, right? Now, the people that had owned that business, all right, they bought it from another couple that started it back in 1975. All right, it's called Red School Cafe. All right, now, why is it called that? Because it originally was an actual single classroom school, built in 1875. Somewhere it had operated all the way up through the 60s, the 1960s. Right? We even have a person that comes there every day for breakfast. We call him Red School Andy. This guy comes every single day for breakfast, for coffee. He went to school there. He went to school there in the 1960s. All right? Now, so the people that started that restaurant, they were just looking to create a job. And so they had a small menu. All right? They started this little cafe. It was a cute little spot. Back then, that area was all farms. I mean, all farms. It had basically just a trucker and a local farm type community response. Then they ran it for many, many years. The couple that we bought it from, they had bought it from the original people that started up the business. They bought it like 30-something years ago. And they did exactly the same thing. In fact, they moved into the apartment behind the school. They had built in a small apartment there. We were there for over 30 years, 35 years. And again, all they did is the wife operated, the husband was the cook, and they just wanted a job. Now, they had come from a restaurant family, a small restaurant family that owned a couple other places, and that's all they were looking for. They were looking to sit there all day, or actually, you shouldn't say all day. It was a breakfast restaurant, so they were closed by like 1 o'clock. So they'd get up early, kind of like all day, right? So they were up at 4:30. They were done by 1 o'clock. He loved to play golf, and it was just a great job. He didn't have a boss except for his wife, right? Well, what can I say? But they got along really well. In fact, they've gone out and retired out in West Virginia, which is really cool. But when we bought that restaurant, we knew that we were buying someone's job. Now, we knew we had to change it. And so what we did is we started by putting a deck on the outside of the property, because they had only had 36 seats in this restaurant, and you don't fill every seat at every booth. So we basically, over the course of 1 year, remodeled the inside, made it really, really cool, brought in some barnwood, got rid of some of the old paneling. It wasn't the original paneling from when they first built it. It was that beaded paneling that came in the 4x8 sheets. It was really kind of ugly at that point. Okay, we ripped up the old carpet. In fact, when we ripped up the carpet in this place, it said Willard Hall, Northwestern University. So like about 25 years ago, they got used carpeting out of Northwestern, and they covered up the original, the original hardwood floor. It's kind of like the flooring you see in the old gymnasiums. Very, very cool. In fact, when we redid the floor, that's when I knew that Red School Andy had gone to school there in 1963. He says, I haven't seen this floor since I went to school here. It was really a kind of an awesome thing. Anyhow, we have doubled the revenue in this restaurant. We took this restaurant from being someone's job to turning it into a business. It has its own manager. We've increased the quality of the food tremendously, increased the menu. When I went in there as a breakfast restaurant, they didn't even have a can of whipped cream in the place. All they basically served was anything you can make with an egg, an omelet, sunny side up, whatever. Now it's an expanded menu. We've got the people coming. We've got more people than seats. And now we're looking at taking that apartment and converting that now into another dining room. Because we are to the point now where we need the space. What I'm saying is you can start something that's small, but it was successful. You see, the key to buying a restaurant, the key to buying any business is buy a business that is already successful. Why was it successful? Well, hell, it got through the pandemic. It had such a following that they were literally selling food from the window. during the pandemic. People would call up, order it, pick it up at the window. Now, in fact, like many restaurants, what they really created through the pandemic was another line of business called DoorDash. Now DoorDash for many restaurants, it's like having another division in your business. And so my point is, even though we started this was our first restaurant. It was small, but it was a success. Now, was it the kind of restaurant we look for now? No, we want something bigger now. But we knew that based upon the population of the community, they did not add one seat to this restaurant since 1975, and the population has skyrocketed. Hell, there's a subdivision completely surrounding this restaurant now, of which they sold off parts of the property to build that subdivision. They originally had a spot on the highway that was 5 acres. It's down to 1 acre. Now, for us, we felt that this was both a real estate play and an opportunity to operate a good restaurant, because we also bought the property. 1 acre on a really nice highway, plenty of traffic, and 5, 6, 7 years from now, we don't know. Our expectation is that property value is going to really soar. Why? Just as a restaurant, as we build out the restaurant, we put more money into the business. The business then ends up paying more rent. You pay more rent to a commercial property as long as the expenses stay relatively the same for operating the actual property. Then the NOI goes up. The NOI goes up, and what do I always say? Then the value of the building goes up. So this is what I'm talking about. So when she says stay away from restaurants, it's just that she doesn't understand restaurants, and she's just going by what she heard. I'd like to know if she's ever actually run a restaurant. All right, there's an island off in the Greek Isles. All it has there are Greek families. They all speak English. They're all first and second generation Americans that ran restaurants extraordinarily successfully. And they're all wealthy. Now, in this specific island, a lot of them are from New York, but you can tell who's the Yankee fan and who's the Mets fan or who's the Cubs fan. They all put their baseball flags outside their houses, okay? I mean, this is real shit. So my point is, even if you want to start on the smaller end, but don't go and necessarily create yourself a job. That's not what I ever talk about. I talk about scaling. Now, somebody could have bought this restaurant. They could have made very little changes. They could have spent very little money, and they still could probably operate this restaurant on what is considered to be a mom and pop success story. But why do you want that, right? Life's too short to sit there. Ask me how much time I've spent in that restaurant. Primarily, except for the actual remodel, where I was involved in the construction part of it. I have not spent any time there except to eat there. Because in our structure, in the way in which we operate restaurants, we've created a corporate structure. We have a manager. We now have a division manager coming on board that's going to then manage over all the other restaurants. Up to this point, it's been a COO who's been that division manager. Well, we need to free his time up because all the other restaurants are doing so well that we have to bring in now a division manager. We have to free his time. So, now I get it. Some of what she does when she puts something like that out is clickbait. But let's get past the clickbait. I mean, if you go and you read the comments on this video, they're all full of hate from people that are running successful restaurants. It's kind of like a little secret. I don't know if it's been put out that way, but this is really where this kind of rolls this back a little bit. One of the businesses that fail the most is when you start a new restaurant. They have an extraordinarily high failure rate. And why is that? Well, because number one, a lot of restaurants are started by people who love to cook. They're chefs, or they're advanced cooks, or they're sous chefs somewhere else, and they want to have their own restaurant. All right. Now, the problem with that is that they don't know how to operate a restaurant properly. They know how to put out a good plate of food. And there is a world of difference between putting out an amazing plate of food, a good plate of food, a quality plate of food, and running a business. And so, because of the kinds of people that are attracted to starting a restaurant, there is a high failure rate. But you show me, when we used to, as we call Greek restaurants, the breakfast restaurants, you show me how many of the owners are sitting in the kitchen, standing in the kitchen, I should say, no one's sitting, standing in the kitchen and cooking the food. It doesn't happen. Now, I'm not saying that if 3 people don't show up, that they don't jump in and help a little bit, but it doesn't happen. You have to apply business principles to running a restaurant, not how to cook food. Just watch the programs, Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. It's all there. Most of these reasons that these businesses fail is because of chef problems, of the management problem, of the management's family problems. These are the reasons why these businesses fail. But when you look at them and you buy them based upon a corporate structure, based upon scaling a business, then you are only looking for successful restaurants to start with. Now, when she says that, the average business sells for X amount of dollars and restaurants sell for a lot less, that may be true. But let me tell you, folks, that $180,000 average sale, those are really small restaurants. Those are, if they're actually selling at that price, those are restaurants that are just someone's buying a job. That's not the kind of restaurant you're looking to do. We feel very fortunate that we were able to take a micro restaurant, right? Someone's family job and turn it into a real business. Now, we had to spend some time, we had to spend some money. And then when we look back at it, we said, yes, this is a success, but the amount of time and money that we spent to get it to where it is today, which is really nice, we have no qualms, operating very well, we could have applied to a bigger restaurant. So sometimes it's just a matter of scale. It's still successful. All right? It didn't go out of business. Okay? So when you're looking for a restaurant, make sure that you're looking not to get a job. Don't buy a job. Try to make sure that there is some management already there, and it's just not the owner. Now, unfortunately, in this industry, that's not always the case. So you better have an acquisition team, a team that's going to go in. It's that initial operations people that are going to go in and they're going to run this thing for you, get it to where you need it to be. That's how you scale. All right? Now, that's just the way this thing rolls. All right? There's always going to be people that are going to tell you, don't do something. But if there's a restaurant in your area and you've always thought that you just want to be in business and you understand business and it's priced right and it's successful, the key is do not try to buy an unsuccessful business. Let me just kind of give you an example. Sitting down in a local area, an upscale neighborhood area where I was sitting at the bar, I was getting to know someone there that is thinking about selling their restaurant. So I stopped in just to talk to him a little bit. Right? And sitting at the bar in the other corner is a guy that is an entrepreneur. All right? He starts telling me about a restaurant he's thinking about buying. But this restaurant has been closed for a year. Sure, it's in a great location, but it's been closed for a year, and he's trying to buy it and then reopen it. And I'm like, well, you can do that, but why? Why do you think your ego is so much bigger than the last guy's ego? Or how big does your ego have to be to think that you're going to go succeed at something that someone else just failed at? Think about it. I am not here to pull something out of the dumpster. That's ridiculous. There are too many businesses in America today, including thousands and thousands of restaurants, in which the people have run them for 20, 30 years, and all they want is out. And their kids want nothing to do with them. In fact, we're looking at one restaurant where it's the second generation. The restaurant's 50 years old. It's been in the same family for 50 years. And they're ready to sell. The second generation's ready to sell. The first generation's been living in Florida and Greece for the last 10 years, 15 years. And now the child, who's not a child anymore, the person's in their 50s, they've done so well that they're looking to get out too. Because what happens when you've been in business for a long time? Well, time becomes more important than money. Once you have the money necessary to go and buy totally your time back, because they were running this, it's a good sized restaurant, but they were family run, and this person wants to buy their time back. And the only way they really can do it, all right, is to go and sell it. You see, one of the reasons we're able to rely on our managers is because it's the model in which we're creating. Okay, it is a small corporate model. We don't get the phone call when someone doesn't show up. My son's the CEO of the company. He doesn't get the phone call when the cook doesn't show up. The manager gets the phone call, and if the manager can't figure it out, well, then the COO gets the phone call. Well, and starting very soon, it won't even be the COO. It'll be the division manager will get the phone call. You see, there's a reason why corporations have structure. I mean, really. You think Jeff Bezos is sitting there dealing with who didn't show up at a distribution center to go to work? Seriously? And so I get it. When you're first starting, you want to buy the kind of businesses that will have the greatest level of success. But that does not matter whether it's a restaurant, a plumbing business, electrical business, a laundromat, which he really likes to try to get the people to buy. Hell, my father owned laundromats in the 60s. I used to sit there while he would count the quarters. Now, does that make it, is the laundromat business the only business? No. She likes to have people buy boring businesses. That's great. A restaurant business you can make it a boring business, or you can make it a business that'll be full of chaos. It's up to you. It's how you want to run it. You can sit there for 5 hours a day, you can sit there for no hours a day, or you can sit there for 12 hours a day. How do you want to run it? But that's any business, my friend. That's any business that runs the same way. So, my advice is basically, if you're thinking about buying a restaurant, all right, don't buy it because you want to be the person that is the cook, that's the chef, that wants to put out the great food. No, that's not why you start a restaurant if you want to make money. If you just want to display your skills, no problem. But understand, make sure you have a partner that understands business. That's really important. All right, and make sure you buy a restaurant. Don't start one. The failure rate's insane because of all the egos involved around a restaurant. You pull those egos out and you replace those with business principles, and now you have success. So, listen, if you're out there, you work at a restaurant, you're thinking about buying a restaurant, you hate restaurants, I don't really give a shit. But the bottom line is, leave a comment, ask some questions. This is part of what we do. We are real estate entrepreneurs, but as the word also says, we are entrepreneurs. And whether it's a marina, whether it's a golf course, no matter what it is, it all has to be run with business principles. And if you operate them that way, your chance of success goes through the roof. That's really the bottom line. And remember, don't buy a failing business. Don't buy a closed business. Don't start a new business. Buy a successful business in which the guy's 70 years old and wants out, and he's happy to help you finance the thing. Where his only alternative is to close the business. There are thousands and thousands of businesses that close every year. They just close down. Well, that's ridiculous. Create some relationships in the industry in which you're interested. So whether it's restaurants, motels, hotels, electrical, plumbing, welding, whatever it is that you're interested in, go start building some relationships with some of the owners. And am I telling you to go build a relationship with someone who's 35 years old thinking he's going to sell? No. The only reason that guy's going to sell is because he made a mistake. And he's got no time to talk to you anyways because he's running 100 miles an hour. Go build some relationships with some people that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s that are still running these businesses. Because those are the people that are happy to give somebody else a start. They've made their money. So think about it. Remember what we always say. Think big. Start now. Grow fast. V. Rigoni, Max, high performance real estate entrepreneur. And remember, only buy a successful business.